your views diverged from each other at some point. Do you remember what was that point?
So what really happened, the main difference I think probably comes from what happened to us immediately after the war. Of course, I served in the war. Mr. Jefferson did not. He was doing political things that he felt were necessary, and to some extent he is correct about that. However, immediately after the war, I worked on trying to get pensions for soldiers, the same soldiers that had fought for the independence of the country, fought for the independence you enjoy in your day. And I found myself stymied time and time again by an ineffective central government that had no real power. So that's what I was doing immediately after the Revolutionary War. Immediately after the Revolutionary War, you weren't even in North America. You were in France, where you were watching a despotic government fall apart. So I was watching a group of people who were trying to run this new government. Many of them had never had any use for government. Many of them had never been affected by government. Some of these people who are coming in that are representatives to these states, especially Pennsylvania and Virginia, that were busy expanding westward. Some of the people in their colonial, or their, sorry, I should say state assemblies by that point, were actually coming from the frontier. These are people who had never really been governed before, either by the British or by the Americans. So I was watching an ineffective government that was pushing aside the people who had fought for its very existence. And to be fair, President Jefferson was not watching that. He was watching a government that had been overreaching and corrupt, crumbling in the hands of the people. So
I was given a first-hand view of what my time in France and in Europe, not just in France, from 84 to 1789, changed me intrinsically on my view of the government, and this is perhaps where our paths, at least politically, we were always at odds with each other, really did diverge, because what I saw in France was not just a corrupt government falling apart. I also decided during my time that if I were an enemy of kings and priests and others who obscure the law so in such a way that average people think they can't possibly understand it, so they must trust the word of someone else and not study it, not learn it for themselves, I was 10,000 times more so afterward. And the core problem, I thought, even more so after my time in France, was that government was too far away. The further away from the people the government is, the less the people have control of it, the less they can trust it, the less they can participate in it. So when I came back, my belief in the need for a centralizing of power in the states was redoubled. Even though I also understood that in certain places, because I saw how impotent our government was for trade agreements, for treaties, because there was too much power in the states in those areas, I realized there were places that we had to be sovereign. But my understanding of this balance of powers between the state and the federal was even more acute. If people feel like they can't understand the law, they're not going to turn to their politicians, their attorneys, and trust them more. They're going to trust them less. If people are not constantly informed, they're going to turn their ignorance into a mark of pride. And they're going to say, well, you know what? Lawyers and politicians can say anything they want, twistify the law in any way they wish to, so whatever I believe must be the truth. And then their ignorance becomes a tool to be used by despots to manipulate them.